Hello, welcome again. Thank you so much for staying tuned. We continue on our topics on minerals. We already started with sodium and we'll continue. We started with the historical perspective. Now we'll be looking at the sources of sodium and, as a matter of fact, the absorption of sodium. The next class we'll be looking at the function of sodium, or actually metabolism of it. But meanwhile, we'll be looking at the sources of sodium, where you can get sodium in food and basically food. Because in dietary, we're looking at dietary sodium. Now, I've already given a historical perspective to it, that the ancients actually used sodium copiously. They use it to preserve their food and also to add taste to it. Now, we'll be going straight to what we have. Now, if you missed that, you can please go over to the previous videos and watch. Please subscribe to the channel. There are so many things to learn, and also follow us and share also if you're getting value. Thank you so much. It helps us to see that we're doing something useful. Thank you so much for that. Now let's go straight to what we have. Dietary sodium. Now sodium occurs naturally in food substances. Now basically, like I said in the previous, it occurs mainly in form of salt. Now, sodium chloride, talked about sodium chloride being the main source of sodium, and there's also some sodium occurring in canned food, but basically it's in form of salt added in food. Now, what are the major sources of sodium? You can find them in the tissues of animals and tissues of plants, but basically animal tissues, in which case you have the natural food sources of meat. Now what you see as meat is when the animal is dead, the flesh is now called meat, but while it is alive, the flesh is called muscles. So we talked about the previous mineral, potassium. We talked about potassium and sodium balance. They are almost like antagonistic minerals. If this one is going to be there in large quantity, the other should not be in large quantity too. Potassium and sodium. And the both of them are group 1 elements in chemistry. Group 1 elements. So the ionic form, they usually have a +1 ion. So they are antagonistic. Now, if an animal, because it's small, now sodium is found in the previous class I talked about, sodium is found in extracellular cells, in the blood fluid, then body fluid, copiously, plentifully in the body fluid when the animal or human is alive. But when the animal is dead, you slaughter an animal, what you know to be the muscle or the flesh is no longer called muscle. It's now called meat. So when you say, oh, we have sodium a lot in the muscles, the animal is dead, you have it in meat. So just taking time to differentiate. This is a very important knowledge you have, the difference between meat and muscle. So muscle while the animal was alive, meat when it's not dead. So you have sodium, a source of sodium is as meat and fish, poultry. Now, yes, poultry, meat, poultry. Now we'll talk about meat. It can be mutton for the meat of sheep and goat, sheep, and then shibon for the meat of goat, or beef, the meat of cattle. Now chicken also, chicken meat, and we also have in dairy, in eggs. You can have sodium in eggs, have in dairy products. We talk about dairy products, we're talking about yogurts, cheese, and the other. You find sodium there. And also some vegetables, for example, now in some of the vegetables like beets, celery, spinach. Now, some people, you feed your animals using fish meal. So the same process, apart from giving them the amino acids, you also adding and incorporating natural source of sodium too. So we'll get to see that in the absorption, when we come to absorption, in the absorption of sodium, there's a link with the absorption of certain amino acids. As a matter of fact, certain amino acid works in tandem to produce a certain seasoning, monosodium glutamate. We'll get there. Now, the next source of sodium we'll talk about is processed food. Of course, it's actually incorporated into this processed food. Now you have like bread, sodium is incorporated, canned food, snacks. As a matter of fact, we want to, like we said in the previous class, please check the previous video. People who are hypertensive should be careful with their consumption of sodium because it increases blood pressure, causes hypertension, high blood pressure. So you have to be careful with your consumption of sodium. Salt, that is salt, which is the source of sodium. So we'll talk about another source of sodium is common salt, which is the table salt. Is during cooking. Some people like to add extra salt when they are eating. They say, no, the salt is not enough, they add salt. And sometimes in preserving of food, some people use a lot of salt. The salt they don't soak it to take the salt off the cook that way, and the food becomes so salty. So you have to be careful in consumption of salt, sodium from salt. Now, food additives like baking soda have baking soda. Of course, you see the soda, baking soda from sodium. That is actually sodium bicarbonate. Baking soda, the proper chemistry name is sodium bicarbonate. So it's also monosodium glutamate. Now it's a common seasoning in this climate, in this part of the world. You have those seasoning like should I call brands like your Maggi, your Knorr, and this. And those are basically monosodium glutamate. The Maggi, the Knorr cubes, and all those things. You can taste them. You see that they are salty already. Now look at it. This glutamate is the amino acid glutamine, and this is sodium. So single molecule of sodium with glutamine together. So this is an amino acid, and sodium together. You come to see that here, amino acid. So the next is absorption. How is sodium absorbed in the body? Like phosphorus, like potassium. Sodium absorption is also in the small intestine. Now, it's usually by active transport. In this case, by active transport in the presence, and is linked with amino acids and glucose. Glucose provides the basic energy to drive the process. Now, almost all ingested sodium, represented with sodium ion, actually enters the bloodstream, contributing to fluid and electrolyte balance. Now, you need to have certain ions in a certain level to maintain balance, homeostasis. So when it's absorbed into the blood, it's actually to a certain levels, should be a certain level, a range by which the body will be okay. If it's too much, it's going to be a hyper, we'll get to it, what is that pseudo? Hypernatremia. If it's too small, it's going to be hyponatremia. So we have to be very careful in the consumption of sodium, the absorption of it. Now, in regulating the quantity or level of sodium in the body, the kidney plays a vital role, because excess sodium is actually excreted via ultrafiltration by the kidney in animals and in humans and animals, and also hormones also play vital roles. We're going to talk about that when we start talking about metabolism of sodium, and that will be in the next class. So please stay tuned. Now, having done this, we've done this today, and we've also done absorption. The next will be metabolism of sodium. You want to stay tuned in the next class. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you. Let's see. Bye.